Okay, thank you everyone. We are here with Swati Shetty, the producer of Wedding Season, which the ScreenCraft audience is well aware of at this point. We have been celebrating Shivani's success for, my goodness, 4 years at this point. And the week is finally here. The film will be released on Thursday.
The day
And
is finally here. It's coming out tonight, midnight.
oh my goodness, it's the third. I have
Yes,
totally lost track of time.
exactly. So midnight tonight, it's like less than whatever, 12 hours.
Yes, we are literally hours from it. And I think that that is probably as good a springboard as any, because I wanted to talk today about how the film is crazy that it has gotten to this point. And Swati, want to hear about just that process, and obviously what drew you to the project, and what to be excited about with this. And myself just remembering when it was a script in one of our competitions, and sort of the journey that it has traveled since then. So I guess maybe to sort of start in the middle, oddly enough, Swati, how did you come to the project? How did you come to be involved with Wedding Season?
Sure. Uh, so as you know better than anyone else, I think wedding season basically, obviously, Shivani gave birth to it, and I think it is first ScreenCraft's baby before it became anyone else's baby. Whether it was me or Netflix or any one of us. So yes, I mean, you and Ryan and John Rhodes, you guys found Shivani. You took it to Netflix, and I remember being at the Netflix lobby. I was there, talking to people about what I want to do and stuff like that. And I remember running into Vivian Lynn, and Vivian said to me, "Hey, Swati, there's something we've been meaning to talk to you about. Would you be open to looking at something we send you? We want you to like look at a script." And then she spoke to Christina. They sent me the script. They wanted basically my opinion on this, and they wanted to see, if this could be a film that Netflix could back. They said, "We clearly see this needs development at this stage, but we want you to tell us what you think, whether you think this could be made into a film." And having worked at Netflix before, obviously the thinking was aligned, right? So we were talking the same language. And I read it, I enjoyed it, and clearly this also aligned with my own goals. I am, well, I can't say new anymore because I'm 6 years old in America as of yesterday. But I'm still new in many ways, right? And I mean, America is too big to understand, and it'll take time, especially for someone who spent over 4 decades in another country like India. Uh, so for me, I always think about it and I'm like, do I want to do what everybody else is doing, and at this stage, maybe not, because it's waste of everybody's time and mine. I have learned so much over the last 4 decades by just throwing myself into situations, into learning, into, just things that fascinated me, interested me, and then put myself out there, took risks, made something, and had learnings of those things, failures, successes, right? So when I got here, and I got here to basically work at Netflix and then work for Imagine for a while, with Imagine for a while. And when I moved out to become an independent producer again, I think the one thing that drew me was clearly this is a great time for telling stories that people haven't heard before. You know, Introducing worlds that people haven't seen before. And who better than me, who is between these two worlds? America itself is new to me. And then I come from another world, and I am different in America in many ways. One, I'm a woman, underrepresented in many ways, not different, but a woman. Uh, well, I'm older too. I am a foreigner, right? And I am South Asian. I am brown. So all these things put together make me quite unique in a room. I also have an accent, which again is clearly telling you, hey, if you haven't noticed already, I am so different from you. So I think I completely understand, you know, people's emotions when they feel that way. because I feel that way all the time, despite being this person who is so strong and courageous and speaks her mind and, can almost be abrasive sometimes. I'm a straight shooter, so I don't really mollycoddle someone, when as I get something across. And despite being that person, it is hard, more often than not. And so I feel like, having gone through so much over the last few years, I feel like I'm at that right place to be able to champion these stories, and when wedding season was like a great opportunity to kick that off, I I was like, okay, this was meant to be. It's come
Right.
my way.
No, I mean, I'm so glad that you spoke to it, because as you mentioned, it originally came through ScreenCraft, and I was running
Right.
ScreenCraft at the time, and that was where I read it. And so much of what you said drew you to the project was what made it stand out to me. I had not seen that story before. I had not heard that voice before, and it wasn't a sort of generalized view of this story. It was from such a specific
Right.
perspective, like you mentioned, a very American and South Asian culture. And so it makes perfect sense. And one of the things that you did mention was the development that went into it. And I guess I would just love to hear what that process has kind of looked like, because so many of the writers on ScreenCraft, this is what they're dreaming about, right? And
Yeah.
I think they want to see that script get to that level. But of course, the script that won the competition, definitely not the script that ended up being produced. And so what happens between all of that?
So I think the development process is something that all writers should totally embrace, because, I think that the attitude with which you basically reciprocate two notes is really sort of giving you a direction as to where your story will go, or where your film will go. Because, and I see that a lot with Shivani. That's a very, very good example, right? Of a writer who has been through so many rounds of notes. She went through, I'm sure, a bunch of notes with you guys, then with me, over and over for a few months, and with Netflix, right? And so basically, it was a back and forth. Netflix would send me their notes, then I would look at their notes, I would put together my notes, compile it all, send it to her. And this happened a few times until early February, I think, or late February, when this script was greenlit, you know, and Netflix said, okay, we're going ahead with this film. Now let's move forward. I mean, we still needed development work, but we were in a good place where they thought, yes, we're going ahead now. Now, in terms of, like, just for perspective to the writers, I think where development really comes in is many aspects, right? So one, I think the company that's actually backing your project, putting money behind it, they have their own goals. So, and those goals come from their learnings, from their strategy going forward, the kind of content they stand for, various things like that, right? And on some levels, they read your story and they know that this is something that is a fit, right? So it may, more often than not, it is at least a 60 to 70% fit. Okay, otherwise it's a pass. But if it's 60 to 70% fit and they see, okay, this story fits on all these counts, then let's put in some work to take it to 100. And when they do that, I think some writers react to it with, like, oh my God, what kind of notes are they going to give us? The studio is just going to, like, tear it apart. And, am I going to, like, now listen to these executives? That kind of attitude. And then there are writers like Shiwani who totally know that every idea is valuable. And who also, I think what is also important is, and I think it comes from the attitude. I think the writer needs to conserve herself and her own sort of goal for this story, right? Because if you come from that place, then you're not insecure. You're just receiving ideas as they come along from different people. You know the path you want to take, and the moment you look at an idea, you're like, okay, does this better what I have, or it's taking away from something, and is not aligned with the direction that we all agreed to go on, right? So if you're really the person who's, holding the fort, then you can do that. There's clarity of thought, and there's no insecurity, and the script only gets better, right? And nobody, I mean, and the execs, the producer, everybody is in general happy with the process. The writer may get a little frustrated along the way if the notes are all over the place, and that happens. But I think the smarter writer will learn to deal with it and find ways of, how to address it, where to say no, how to say no, just all of that. I'm not saying they have to be salespeople in any way, no, but they just have to be clear, Uh, I think when you're clear with your story, you're meditative in what you're doing, and it's not just writer, anybody, right? Then it's easier to say no to someone if it doesn't work for you. There is an explanation, and the other person will listen.
No, I think I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that was what I don't know, maybe there's part of me that just assumes that a project will not get to this stage because the averages are against them. But when I saw just the work that Shiwani was putting in, how
Yes,
receptive she was to the process every step of the way, because it is so much work and it is so much work, and putting
absolutely.
it, not just from a time standpoint, but putting your energy and your heart and your soul into it
Yes,
over and over again. That's what it takes. And it's, I mean, here, we're a couple of hours from it, I'm sure it's worth it. Where does the role of the producer kind of fall in that? Because you're sort of in the space of both like note giver and receiver, right? You're kind of
yes,
like the mediator. How do you balance
yes.
that in that
Actually,
situation?
we're so aligned in this chat, because I was just going to say to you that, what also helps is when the producer is aligned with the writer. I think those collaborations have to be right. I mean, when you know your producer has your back, when you know your producer gets you, and you get your producer, even if she talks with an accent, even if she takes a little longer to convey the same idea, right? But you sort of understand her and you know she's coming from the right place. And there is something that I have to receive in all this that she's giving me. When you come from that place, it's really very productive, because she knows that a lot of it, even before it got to her, I've already sort of defended. Uh, you know, or when it comes to her, it comes to her in a certain way. It comes with a little more context.
Mhm.
So I think that's where a producer's job comes in, not only with writing, with everything else as well. It's like also the director, to so I mean, I have to protect his interest as well. He has to tell the story he believes in. Uh, but at the same time, I can never forget that I was hired by Netflix. It's their money, on the line, and they clearly know what they want. So I have to totally watch out for their interests, right?
Mhm.
So when you put all that together, if you come to a place where honestly you are accountable and you need to be working so much harder to come to the right decision. I think a producer's job is really decision making, over and over and over and over. Every second you're making decisions. Now, whether it seems like you made the decision, or the writer made the decision, or the director made the decision, or the studio made the decision, right? More often than not, it's somebody else's decision, right? But
Mhm.
you are driving that decision. You see what I'm saying? Like, it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if people think it's your decision or not, but that decision needs to be going towards taking that film forward. You see what I'm saying? So I could be making that decision through Shivani or through Tom or through Netflix, or, influencing certain things, not manipulating, but influencing certain things where they're not going negative. The energy stays positive and it just goes into a more constructive, productive zone. Am I getting across?
No, 100%. I mean, I think one of the things that I think about of what's just so incredible about film and television is that I can't think of another medium where this many people are involved in the collaborative process and
Right.
on the same page
So
and
true.
making the same piece of art, that it's amazing that anything ever gets made at all.
Yeah,
Right? Because
exactly.
it's because you're mentioning the network and the director and the writer, but there's a crew of dozens of
Exactly.
people as
Exactly.
well.
Exactly. The same relationship, as a producer, you manage the director and the writer and their relationship. You manage everybody's relationship with the network. You manage the actors with the director, the actors with the line producer, the actors with whoever, right? And then their managers and agents. Then the HODs, because it's a similar relationship with the HODs and the director. because the HODs are, it's really the director's decision on who he picks. But for whatever
And
reason, if that doesn't go
for our
right,
audience who doesn't know what an HOD is,
or head of department,
yep, thank you.
right? So your head of department is your production designer, your DP, and all these people. DOP or DP again? I'm confused.
DP, yep, director of
DP.
photography.
Yeah,
Yep.
in India we say DOP, so I'm always confused which is India and
America, we
which is
just drop the article. We just get to the point. DP.
Okay, great, DP, great. So our DP, production designer, and everyone else involved with the film, right? The camera team even. Now there could be differences between just like the artistic or the creative way of thinking. And you, as a producer, you need to find that place where both can meet, if you're brought in, right? And ideally they need to bring you in time so it doesn't become something bigger than it was meant to be. So I think that is where the producer ends up being involved at each and every stage with like maybe 2 steps behind, without imposing themselves, but being there when they're needed. And which is why a producer is also on set at every moment, and more so in this case, because obviously, our decision on having Tom direct it was a very well thought out decision. But we knew that having a non-Asian, not non-South Asian director needed for us to be extra alert with the things that could potentially, be sensitive. So people like Shiwani, myself, the DP, everyone else who was South Asian, or the actors, everyone stepped up, because obviously you want to set up your director for success too. You don't want him to do one little thing that, causes problems, because like I mentioned earlier, it was collaborative. I think everybody came together. The sum of energies really worked out. I really do believe, to your point, in terms of a film is so many people coming together. In my experience, and you could give me an example of a movie that's off, and that's very likely, but there are many examples, I'm sure. But at least from what I have seen in my experience in India, also to some extent here, I think when the energies of the people who come together, when you sum it all up, if it's positive, a film always succeeds, always. And it could be the worst script, it could be the worst story, it could be, name those bad films that did well. And when I say bad films, just like subjective, sure. Yes, but you know what I'm saying. You know why they do well? Because the people who come together, sum of energies, either it's one person who brings that kind of energy, which is hard, but it's at least a majority who bring that kind of energy to a project, and it succeeds. And it can go completely the other way. Like, for example, in this case, Ryan and John, their relationship with me could be a completely negative relationship, because if you think of it technically, well, I didn't steal it from them directly. Netflix gave it to me. But if they had to think that way and they were negative people, they'd be like, oh, she stole the project from us, or I could be saying so many things. So I'm just saying somewhere, everybody came towards us saying, okay, great project, let's make it happen. We all know our roles. And even despite the pandemic and despite, I know, make it sound so easy, it wasn't easy, but it came together really well. And I think we have a decent film.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to see it. And I think that that's just a really great point that I want to emphasize one more time that you were saying, is that every step of the way, really talented people that had something that they wanted from this project embraced that collaboration. Shiwani embraced somebody, changing components of her script. The producing team that took it to Netflix, it's like, you have to know other people are going to come into this. And that it all kind of starts with the script. It starts with the page. Like, having other people put their stamp on it is not something that you should feel is a concession of your art. It's this like beautiful process by which you get, these stories in front of you. And I can just hear the excitement in your voice and the discussion of the project. And just like, I just still cannot believe that it's going to be on our screens in a couple of hours
in less than 12 hours.
Yeah. So I guess, we're down to our last couple of minutes here. Just anything else that you want to cover? How are you feeling? It's almost showtime for the world.
Someone else asked me that question, and I will say that, typically every film is a hard journey, right? Every film. Like I think it's very rare where a producer would say, oh, that was cakewalk. No, never. It's always hard. It's so many people coming together. It's a story you have to tell. There's so many elements, then go into the nuances, all of that. And then all these force majeure things that happen, right? Uh, and in this case, there was a big force majeure, right? I will say that from my experience so far, which is not huge, but it's not very small either, I will say that this project for me would have been potentially like a more easier, smoother project if not for the pandemic. You know, maybe that's why the pandemic happened to just make it tough for us. But that said, you know, with the pandemic, obviously we had so many challenges. We could have definitely delivered something way better than this, I think, and we all think, if not for the pandemic. But we still delivered something we're proud of. You know, we did a good job. And when I say we, I mean each and every one of us. You know, like one of the big contributors, we don't talk about that much because no interviewer really ends up asking about it, is our editor. You know, so much of the film happens on the editing board. And, you know, and David L. Bertman, did a fantastic job. I mean, I was in the room with him and Tom, and I can tell you, you know, a lot of the film happens in the edit room, and he was great at it. You know, he's going to probably be there for a screening, but
Yes.
yeah, I really think, you know, he deserves also a lot of credit like everyone else does. And when it comes to, like, you asked me for my last little thing, but I will say that for me, when people ask me, like, are you nervous? And you're the one who's like talking to me literally less than 12 hours before film release. I am happy nervous. You know, I am like really, it's a sort of good nervous energy. I feel good because the people who've seen it so far, it's obviously not one of those, you know, Sundancey films. It's a happy mainstream rom-com, and it was intended to receive a certain sort of reaction, and we've gotten that reaction from everyone who's seen it so far, which are a few Netflix employees. I keep getting messages from Netflix people who've had access to it for a month now. And then, you know, everyone else who saw it at the Noy House screening last night and a few other people close to the film. We've gotten great reactions so far. And so I feel like if the Netflix algorithm does the job that it's meant to do, I have a feeling it will do well.
Great.
And I really want for people to just relax and enjoy the film. It is a film that honestly, having gone through a pandemic, such an intense couple years, it is one of those films where you really don't have to use your brain too much. Yes, you may cry. Well, there are quite a few people who've said, oh, we had tears and whatever, but they're all like happy tears, you know, they're all good tears. And there's joy, and there's dancing, and there's music. And I just hope people just enjoy it.
Just, it is, I think if you've ever been a person that has been on the outside looking in of this industry, which is
Yeah,
most of us, you know,
yeah,
if you don't have a person that you didn't grow up in Los Angeles, or you didn't know the industry, or you know, you're not from a demographic that the industry is
yeah,
largely composed of, you know, the pathways are not abundant to you if they
yes,
exist at all. And I think that programs like ScreenCraft that I had the privilege to work with, hands down, the greatest thing about them is that they provide that pathway, that you had a writer who wrote the script, who told their story, who took what I would argue is the hard way, right? You know, it was a contest with thousands of submissions, and
right,
just trusting that their work and their story would stand out, and
yes,
a story that was unique to them and had historically been told by other people. And so when yeah, I mean, I just like when I see the film being released and have the chance to watch it tonight, like that to me, it's a win for everyone, because it
yes,
is not how the system was designed to work. And because of people like Shiwani, because of people like John and Ryan and pushing forward with it, and people like you and everyone that worked on this project, that story gets to be told. And I know that everyone that comes to the ScreenCrafts of the world,
and you who read the script and actually brought it to everyone, said, no, that's so important.
and thank you. I just like, and it's a responsibility we take seriously. And I think that I know that that is just the dream of every person that sends their work out there. And so if nothing else, you know, watch wedding season, laugh, cry, be entertained, but also, you know, know that it happens. Know that your story can get out there, that you
Yes.
can sort of have this like,
I mean, here is a
yeah.
woman who's a foreigner who doesn't even, who talks with an accent, who just moved here 6 years ago, who's become an independent producer just recently. And, it's my 6th anniversary and it's my first Hollywood film that's out. So honestly, I pinch myself too, truly, because it's not easy. I don't think any American would ever understand that, because America is a privileged society to a large extent, from where I come, especially with like traditional families, it's just hard to even dream of something like this. I am going to pinch myself for a while that it's real. Of course I had bigger dreams, and this is not just like I do have, I may not be super ambitious, but I dream a lot, I have bigger dreams and they come true, because I think somewhere the universe knows, it knows better than me. If I really mean it, if I really like it's coming from the heart and not just, manipulative head things. Uh, but I feel you're so right with what you're saying. And the reason I'm giving my example is that because it is really far removed from what one would think. I didn't even study film. I didn't even like, and so I feel like anybody who is doubting themselves should just go for it. Like, don't ever second guess your dreams and your intuition and your insights. Don't ever. It holds you in good stead. That's totally what Shiwani did, right? She, for 10 years, she just kept going.
Right.
Yes, I'm working with her again, and I can tell you there's a reason I work with her, and people like her, even the others I work with. They're all great people, And at the end of the day, it's the journey, right? The film will happen, not. I mean, we're lucky that this happened, right? There were points where we even questioned that. We were like, is this going to happen anymore? With the pandemic and everything. I mean, you're aware of it. So that happens to films all the time. You can't do much about it, right? But the journey is what matters. And when you're developing it, when you're working with all these people, if you're having fun, I think that's what matters. If you're learning, that's what matters. And that's why I feel I'm lucky with the kind of people I've surrounded myself with now. They're all great people. And for their sake and mine, I really feel like I need to get some projects out there.